the LaxFactor podcast. What is up, college lacrosse fans? You're watching episode 224 of the LaxFactor Lacrosse podcast, and today we are going to talk about Faceoff specialists. Now, the statistics for these guys on their websites were jacked up, and I couldn't trust any of them, so we're going to look at a bunch of guys. I've only been looking at really 3 guys from each position group with maybe like 1 or 2 others that I mentioned. In this case, I want to talk about 6 face-off guys that I think have a chance at winning these spots, because I think that face-off from season to season, the guys that are at the top tend to be a little bit more inconsistent in terms of guys that are guaranteed to get these spots. I think in terms of like attack All-Americans, it's a lot easier to pinpoint who's going to get the top 3 spots at the attack, at defense, and so on, I think, than it is over face-offs, because they're not the keepers of their own destiny completely, and they do rely on some wing play. So I want to talk about a bunch of guys, and then I'm going to tell you who I think will earn those top spots. Before I get into it, as always, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you're watching this on YouTube or if you're watching this on Spotify, excellent. Share the crap out of it with everybody. And then if you're an audio-only listener, same thing. Share the crap out of it. I thank everybody. You can always go to LaxFactor.com to see all our videos, and we're doing a new segment called Lacrosse Film Review Fridays, where Film Review Fridays, we're going to put out a film review video every Friday between now, hopefully, and the end of this upcoming season. Maybe we keep that going forever. So I digress. Let us get into it. And let's talk about the guy that I want to talk about first here. You see, guys that we're going to talk about today, I'm going to talk about Zach Cole. I'm going to talk about Luke Wierman. I'm going to talk about Mike Sisselberger. And then I'm going to skip these 2 guys, and we're going to talk about Tommy Burke, James Reilly, and Petey fucking LaSalla. So the first guy, and he is by far the most important guy on this list to me, and I'm going to go into the most detail about him, is Luke Wierman. And that's partly because I think he's the overall best of the bunch in 2022 out of all of these guys across the board. Not only did he win a national title, but he possesses all of the technical attributes that you'd want out of a faceoff guy, and is able to adjust his strategy to fit the situation as well as anyone in the country. At least over 2022, he showed that he was capable of doing that. And we could see that in how badly he beat up on Petey LaSalla in this 2022 season after, having that heartbreaking thing. So that last second faceoff win in the national championship, Wierman wins it over LaSalla. He streaks down the field, takes a shot that would have tied the game, but instead, Alex Road comes up with a national title sealing save for the Cavs, and that apparently stuck with Wierman. He went to work, and in 2022, he owned nearly everyone that he played. Now, Luke Wierman's 2022 production, second in the nation in terms of save percentage with a .661 win percentage. 8 goals, 7 assists for 15 points off 22 shots, 36.4% shooting, and 160 ground balls. He only had 2 games at or below 50% on the season, a 4-goal win over Syracuse where he won 13 of 27, not terrible, and a 5-goal win over Hopkins where he was only 10 of 22. That was his worst game of the year as far as I saw. After that trash game against Hopkins, Wierman played against some of the best face-off athletes in the country on Maryland's way to win the NCAA title, and his performance was just absolute gangster. 20 of 26 against a struggling Rutgers face-off unit in the Big Ten Finals. Eugenio, he barely cracks the top 50 in terms of win percentage. I think he was at like 50-point-some%, and Wierman absolutely owned Rutgers on that day in the Big Ten Finals. NCAA first round against Tommy Burke of Vermont. Burke finished the season 6th nationally in terms of faceoff wins. Wierman won 16 of 19 and had an assist in that win over Vermont in the NCAA first round. NCAA quarterfinals round against Petey LaSalla of Virginia. LaSalla was 8th nationally in faceoff win percentage, 20 of 29 with 2 helpers, Wierman was. NCAA semis against Princeton's Tyler Sandoval. He was 29th in the nation, 13 of 22 with an assist, Wierman was. Finished it off with a 13 of 20 day against Cornell and Angelo Petrakis in the national title game. All 4 of those guys that he played in the NCAA tournament were capable and semi-dangerous faceoff men, some of them very dangerous. Wierman's numbers over that 4-game stretch, 62 of 90 with a .688 win percentage, 4 assists, 39 ground balls, and a national title. Luke Wierman, by far, I think he's I think he's technically proficient in all areas he needs to be. He's an offensive threat. He's got a huge drive, and more importantly, he's got a lot of help on the wings. Now, this is not to take anything away from Luke Wierman, but two of the guys I'm going to talk about, I think, have far more help on the wings than any of the other players overall, and that would be Wierman and Petey LaSalla. And part of what makes them so great is their ability to use them. I'm rolling some highlights of Wierman. Is probably the only one that I'm going to roll highlights of. What I love about Wierman is his ability to, in a scrum, kick the ball out, scoot, get the ball to the guys on the wings or to an open guy to pick up that ground ball off those draws. He's incredible at that, on top of just being great at pinching, popping, pushing and winning forward, getting the ball up in transition. Wierman, one of the best in the game, bar none. And I do think this is the only real true prediction I'm going to make. I think Wierman will repeat as an All-American. And I think that Wierman overall may end up being, he probably won't get the number one spot, but I think that he'll probably be very close. And he'll be between 1 and 2 overall. Now, the next guy I have to talk about is the guy that I know I don't know a whole lot, honestly, about Zach Cole. Now, Zach Cole, if we go back here, he actually led the nation in face-off win percentage over here, 68.1% on the season, had an incredible season overall, and he's capable of putting up points as well. 4 goals, 5 assists for St. Joseph's in 2022. Not a great shooting percentage, but hey, he's a face-off guy. He doesn't need it. But, overall, you win that many face-offs, you win 68.1% of your face-offs. That's a hell of a job. Cole is going to I'd probably say that of the guys I'm going to talk about, the most technically proficient face-off guys are going to be Cole and the guy I'm going to talk about next. But Cole for St. Joseph's, he was an All-American last season. He's going to probably repeat as an All-American again this season. He's got, I think that he was definitely back at St. Joseph's. And a lot of these guys are super seniors. LaSalla's a super senior. Sisselberger, who I'm going to talk about, is a super senior. Tommy Burke is not there yet. He's one of the younger of the crew. But the experience that these guys have and the ability for them to just come back and keep winning faceoffs because of the loss of that COVID season, it's incredible. And we're kind of at, like, I feel like most would agree, this is like an all-time high in terms of the quality of faceoff athletes that we have in Division I lacrosse right now. The Faceoff Academy, Greg the Beast, all these dudes that are training these faceoff guys and really making them, absolute masters of that craft. It's fun to see, and it's especially fun to see when you see these guys end up playing against each other. But Zach Cole, I if I look here, let's go inside lacrosse. I'm doing this off screen. I just got to find the All-Americans because I actually forgot to bring the list up so I could tell you who were the first team and everything last year. All right, so last year, Luke Wierman was the first-team All-American in the face-off, and I think that Luke Wierman has a really good chance of repeating. Now, the only kicker here, Maryland is not going to probably be I can't imagine that Maryland is going to be as good as they were last year. Is he going to have the same amount of help on the wings? Because he's dealing with some new players in terms of who he has on the wings for him. So I'm just wondering if Wierman will see a slight dip in his numbers, similar to how Petey had ridiculous numbers in 2021, and he saw a dip in his numbers in 2022. I think Wierman may see the same thing. So whatever I said earlier, I think Wierman's probably a lock for one of the top three. I like him at number 2. Most likely in terms of All-Americans, because I think that somebody like Zach Cole could technically supplant Wierman, especially if their numbers continue and his numbers go down a little bit, because guys like Cole and Sisselberger didn't have as much help as he had. They weren't playing on teams that were as high profile as he was, and what Wierman did over that playoff run, that just absolutely cemented without any question a first team spot for him. Is he going to have that much success in 2023? Absolutely he could. It's just I think a little bit of it for Wierman's going to depend on what does the team do. A guy like Zach Cole, a guy like Sisselberger, I think if their stats remain similar with a little bit less help on the wings than what we can see with some of these other guys, I think that's the reason I think Zach Cole could end up popping up and eating, one of these top 3 spots. Cole was the second team All-American last season. Now, the next guy I want to talk about here is Mike Sisselberger. And the reason I want to talk about Cole and Sisselberger back-to-back is for that reason. I think that they're both probably... Listen, I'm not a face-off expert, so you could light me up if you want to, but I would just say that based on their numbers and what I know of their roster makeup, I would say that Sisselberger and Cole probably have a little bit less help overall than guys like Wierman and LaSalla do in terms of the wing play. Just because their rosters are so deep for Maryland and for Virginia, you end up putting some dudes on the wing that on some of these other teams might even be playing a little bit more offensive midfield and crap like that. Sisselberger is just an absolute beast and a monster of a human being, though. I think he may actually be the most technical of the bunch, him and Cole for sure. Just a damn beast of a human. His legs look like tree trunks, even compared to the other face-off guys that all have just absolutely enormous legs. Like I said, him and Cole both, I think, have a little bit less help on the wings than LaSalla and Wierman have, but then likewise, they're a little bit less of an offensive threat here overall. Sisselberger, he won 63% of his draws, and he put up 1 goal on the season in 2022. If we go back here, Sisselberger overall was third nationally with a 6.28 win percentage. Cole, like I said, was number 1 with a 6.81. Wierman right in between them with a 6.61. These 3 guys are the guys that I think have the best shot at picking up one of those 3 All-American spots, partly just because they're the 3 guys who ate those spots last season. Sisselberger was the 3rd team All-American, Cole was the 2nd team, and Wierman was the 1st. I think that order may shuffle a little bit, and then there's my kind of dark horse guys that I think you might end up seeing kind of a resurgence of their skill and quality. And the next guy I want to talk about here, obviously, Petey fucking LaSalla. Make no mistake, and I've made it very clear, Petey LaSalla is one of my favorite players in the country because of his 2021 run. The dude just had a ridiculous 2021 season. If we look at his stats over here, in 2021, 10 goals, 7 assists for 17 points, 34% shooting, and then he ends up winning 62% of his faceoffs with 137 GBs. Dude was just bonkers, off the charts, and in that national title win over Maryland in 2021, LaSalla won 21 of 37 for 57%, had a goal and an assist on that day. So his 2021 season was absolutely bonkers. His 2022 season, little bit of dip in the production overall. 8 goals, 2 helpers, and that's partly because I think teams in 2021, especially if you watch his highlight cuts, teams would just let him part the Red Sea. He would just run down the middle of the field, get shots off. I think a little bit more in 2022. Teams were even just half sliding to him on the breaks, enough to make him have to make a more difficult decision. So I think that teams were a little bit more effective at neutralizing LaSalla as an offensive threat, but he still won 60% of his draws. He struggled a little bit more with consistency, whereas Wierman was one of the most consistent faceoff guys in the country in terms of his win percentage and his point production. LaSalla had a couple of games where he was a little bit rougher. Namely, LaSalla's rough games were against Wierman. He was 28% against Maryland on March 19th, so that's not very good. And that was a Virginia loss to Maryland. And then if we look down here, Syracuse. Oh, wait, no, I'm looking at the wrong season here, folks. Nope, that's LaSalla's 2022 season. Yeah, Syracuse, not a great outing, even though Virginia won that game handily. And then you see Maryland again. So Wierman kind of owned LaSalla. LaSalla did well in the other matchups throughout the season, but he did fall off a little bit in 2022. But I like him to be the guy to have a better season in 2023. I think that you might see LaSalla's stats improve beyond everybody else's in 2023 because I like what Virginia is putting on the field across the board. Just like Maryland was a team of roles, they were a team of destiny. They would get in these flows that would just kind of propel the entire team to play better. I think we may see some play like that out of Virginia this year, and I think that may translate to not necessarily more wins. I'd like LaSalla finishing in that 60 to 63% range, but I think he'll put up a few more points, and I think that he's going to be key in Virginia getting themselves back to the Final Four and really pushing it for another national title overall. So LaSalla is one of my dark horses. I think he could I like the top 3 guys. I like Wierman, Cole and Sisselberger to repeat and become All-Americans. Again, I think that there is a very good chance they will do that, but I think that LaSalla has a good shot of yanking one of those guys off the list, depending on how things play out for everybody. And who knows? I could be wrong. A couple of these guys, most of these guys, I'm sure are coming back. Sisselberger was the one I wasn't sure. Their roster just isn't out yet, even though he's got 2 years, at least a year, maybe 2 years of eligibility left. So I believe Sisselberger was definitely coming back as well. Well, I can't say definitely if I wasn't sure. The next guy I want to talk about, another one of my favorite face-off guys in the country, Vermont's Tommy Burke. And like LaSalla, I think if you compare it, he was 61% last year. He had a big breakout season in 2021 where he won 70% of his draws, put up 3 goals and 2 helpers, had 125 ground balls. That production was not quite as ridiculous in 2022, much more pedestrian, but still ridiculous. 61% of the draws overall, a goal and a helper. Lost to Maryland, like we said, lost to Wierman in Maryland in the NCAA quarterfinals, but got Vermont, helped Vermont get into the tournament 2 years in a row here. So I am a big Tommy Burke fan, and I think he's going to have a big season this year at Vermont. And then Tommy Burke will be jumping ship and heading to Ohio State, not in the 2023 season, but for the 2024 season as a graduate student. So he's going to finish his year in 2023 out, or finish his career out at Vermont in 2023, and then move on to Ohio State as a graduate student. At least Ohio State's the place that he's heading to as of this moment here. But I love Tommy Burke, and I think he too, if he has a big season for Vermont and he can get himself back into the 65 plus range, giddy up, he could end up being one of those All-Americans as well. And then another guy that I didn't know a lot about, but I did hear his name a lot during the regular season, and I talked about him in a bunch of podcasts due to how well Georgetown did last year, was James Reilly. I believe he's also back at Georgetown. 6 goals, 5 assists, and won 60% of his draws over the 2022 season. I like Reilly too. The reason I like a bunch of these guys is because of the points they put up. You show me a faceoff guy that can put up 11 points on a season and win 60% of their draws. That is devastating to a defense. That gives every team that these guys play, or that gives Georgetown an advantage. Almost everybody they play, other than when they play somebody like Virginia or someone like Maryland, or even someone that could neutralize him overall. But if you look at his consistency, it's right up there. He had a rough time against Sisselberger and Lehigh, going for 41% here. But, and then he had a rough time towards the end of the season against Nova, Marquette. So, that's my knock against Reilly, is consistency overall. Actually, Georgetown had a really good crop of short stick D mids and an LSM last year. So how does that play into Reilly's production here in 2023 as well? But those are the guys that I wanted to talk about. We got Cole, Wierman, and Sisselberger, who I do think are most likely to repeat, in some order in those top 3 spots. But do not count out Tommy Burke. Don't count out James Reilly. Don't count out Petey fucking LaSalla. And then, like I said, I didn't even talk about Whitfield and Hammett out of Michigan and Massachusetts, partly just because their schedules are so bad in terms of the strength of schedule that, I don't think they faced the best players in the country night in and night out. Let's just see what Whitefield did against Wierman, for instance. Wierman against Michigan. See, Whitefield held his own. Wierman only went 55% against Michigan and Whitefield in the regular season, and that was the only meeting they had there overall. So, I don't know. Sadly, I think this is going to be one of the worst podcast that I've done in a while, because I watched a buttload of tape on all of these guys, and it doesn't tell you a whole lot. All of them are really good at what they do, and all, statistically speaking, you can see that, but I'm not an expert in terms of, hey, this is this guy's strategy. I know that Wierman and LaSalla pinch and pop and push that ball forward as well as anybody. It would look like any of these guys, like Reilly too, that put up points. They have that in their arsenal. But one thing I did notice about Sisselberger is that boy scraps, that boy gets in the dirt, and that boy wins more of his own face-offs, it would seem to me, than a lot of these other guys. And I think that you could say the same for Cole overall. as well, which is why I like both of them as well. So that's it, guys. I'm going to get out of here. I got to get Christmas shopping with my family. I almost didn't put this episode out here because I had a bunch of crap to do, and I'm kind of under the gun to get my wife her Christmas presents before next weekend. But I did want to get some content out for you. Wanted to talk about some Faceoff, guys, even though I am the dumbest overall when it pertains to the Faceoff dot and, the strategies and all that crap. I'm just an idiot. I was never a great Faceoff coach in terms of helping my Faceoff guys get better. And as you can see here, I'm kind of a moron as it pertains to talking about it. But here we are. We did it. I did manage to talk for 20 minutes about Faceoff, guys, here. The only thing I think we have left now, we're going to talk about short stick D mids, LSMs, and goalies, I think is what I have left in terms of the preseason All-Americans. We'll have to see. I'm going to talk about a bunch more schedules overall as well, but wanted to get the Faceoff video out, so that's it. I will be back next week on Friday. We'll do Film Review Friday. I will also be back next weekend on Sunday. We're going to do another podcast, and I don't know if I'll talk about schedules or if we'll talk about another position group in terms of preseason All-Americans, but that is this episode. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If I disappointed you, I'm sorry, but this is what we got here, and Hoost is out. The LaxFactor Podcast.